Okay. So, Fragrance, before we start, is it possible to introduce yourself so my panel would know you?
Yes, I apologize. I was just leaving another recording session, so that's why it took me a minute to get in here. But I'm Frank, and I am the tech team chair for the Buffalo Kwanzaa Committee. I'm also the acting treasurer and corresponding and recording secretary. So I do quite a bit of things on the Buffalo Kwanzaa Committee. You can't really see me, can you? There I am. So I'm just in the car about to leave the recording session. We've been recording all day. But that's who I am, and I'm glad to be of assistance to you. I'm excited about collaborating with Rochester Kwanzaa Coalition this year. So I'm happy to be a part of this here.
I hear you.
And what do you do for Juneteenth? I think you left something behind.
I left probably a lot of things behind. I do a lot of things in the community. This is just one of them with Kwanzaa. Yes, I do work with Juneteenth as well. I've been recruited for their tech team now that they've seen me work on this one. But I usually am working with the arts and culture stage for Juneteenth. And I also help out with the edutainment stage over there at Juneteenth. And I worked with Mama Crystal Austin Seymour when she was doing the Marcus Garvey tent and the Marcus Garvey Back to School Readiness Program. So we did run that in February at the Juneteenth headquarters this year in February. So I do those things and a lot of other things in the community. But me, myself, I am a musical artist and my stage name is Fragrance of Yah. So I have 5 albums that I've produced and I have 6 singles that have been released as well. And I have a community project called Creating Legacies Showcase and Workshop Series. And that's when I collaborate with all of the organizations to do art projects and programs that involve intragenerational workshops.
Thank you, Fragrance. Now I'm going to introduce my panel to you. So we're going to start with our mother, Karen, who's right up there with ladies first. So Karen, you can introduce yourself, talk about your links to Buffalo, and then, you know. You need to unmute. Yep.
Good evening, everyone. I'm glad to be a part of this effort here. My name is Karen Mcclaney Barkley, and I am from Buffalo. I was born and raised there. Although I live here in Rochester now, I work for the Rochester City School District. I teach deaf and hard of hearing. I also am very passionate about teaching our culture to our young people and young and old, because I think we all have missing gaps. So I love to be able to spread the knowledge that I've learned. So that's my background.
All right, Celeste, can you go? We're doing ladies first.
Sure. My name is Celeste Barkley. Karen Barkley is my mother. So I am an employee at L3 Harris. However, I do several things within the community, one of which is working with children in a Rites of Passage program through North Star Rites of Passage, as well as helping my mother facilitate a Saturday school as well. And I also homeschool my son.
Good job. So now we go to the man. So Dilbert, since you have all the gray hair, you can introduce yourself. Unmute.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir. The gray hair shows wisdom, my brother. How you doing?
Right.
Hello, everyone. My name is Delbert Richardson, and I'm so grateful that my brother reached out to me. I'm here in Seattle, Washington, and I guess as an introduction, I call myself an ethnomuseumologist. Ethnomuseumologist is a made-up term, right? That's what we can do in America, right? We can take parts of a word and expand it. So if you think about the word ethno, it talks about ethnicity or ethnic. It speaks to culture. We know what the word museum means, and ology means the study of. So what I do, I take a Eurocentric paradigm of museum, and what I do is I teach American history through an Afrocentric paradigm. What does that look like? I have an internationally recognized and nationally recognized traveling museum. It's broken up into 4 sections. The first section is called Mother Africa. Second section is called American Chattel Slavery. Third section is called Jim Crow. I don't teach civil rights, I teach Jim Crow. And the fourth section is about a 40-foot presentation of everyday items that people that look like me, African Americans, have invented. So it's a multi-sensory pedagogy. What does that mean? It's 90% hands-on. I believe that majority of our children learn faster and even healthier kinesthetically. So in every one of my individual vignettes, there's authentic artifacts that children can touch, feel, and engage with. I have real slave shackles. I have branding irons. I have a real Ku Klux Klan robe, because I think it's important that our children get history through the lens of the oppressed, because there's a rich story when we tell our own story. So some people ask why I call my museum American history. Well, I operate from a belief when we call it Black history. Some people may think the history doesn't pertain to them. When we call it African American history, some may say, guess what? I don't have nothing to do with that history. We call it American history. I get a chance to see myself in the story. So the reason why I start with Mother Africa, because they are determined to tell our history from the enslavement period forward. I'm not going to allow that. So I start with Mother Africa to set up a healthy foundation, identity development, and self-actualization. So I teach STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, coming out of Africa. And my primary audience is pre-K to 12th grade. And so I'm extremely excited to be on this Zoom with you guys, because the work that we are all doing is so important, because our ancestors are really counting us to tell their story.
All right, thank you. Kevin, you have the floor.
If I may have permission from the elders to speak.
Yep.
Okay, I forward. My name is Kevin White, and I am originally from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I've been in Rochester for the last 3 years, and my work coming out of Philadelphia was in education, came to Rochester, and then began to work in housing, public housing. Left public housing about a few months ago, and now I work for myself and I work for the people. And some of the things that I do under my company, Universal Eye Power, which is an LLC, is a consulting group. And from the children, I do a lot of my work is with children, with boys and men, especially our boys and our men, excuse me, as it pertains to rites, rituals as well. So it's good to hear the mama speak about the things that she is doing with the young people in terms of the rights here in Rochester. And it's good to hear, the elders speak as well about what they have going on, as it is all connected. So I'm glad to be here. I'm a poet, spoken word artist, playwright, and I'm just ready, man. I'm ready to be in a community with people who look and sound and talk like me. So, yeah.
Well, I guess Kevin left a few things out. Can you speak about the trainings you do, with the Harambee and your book and everything? I guess you left it all out.
Brother.
School and all that.
Yeah, man. So I am also an author. Coming from Philadelphia, I was the chief operating officer over an African-centered charter school, the first one, which is Harambee Charter School. And then, which is a K-8 school. So it's a K-8. And then I went and was the cultural infusion specialist for one of the African-centered high schools, also in Philadelphia. So a lot of my work is in communities with the Afrocentric community, right? And so in terms of this, what it is and what it means to be coming back or remembering ourselves as Africans here in the diaspora. So as a part of that journey, I began to write books. I have 4 sons and a daughter. And so I began to write books that reflect the faces, names, and situations of our boys on a day-to-day basis. And so some of the books, you could, from Brilliant Bobby, which is a 50-book series that I just started not too long ago, about 2 years ago, I have 2 books published, 5 books written, and with the coming of the new year to write 5 more books for this coming new year so the whole first series will be put forward. It will be out and published next year, this coming year. And in addition to that, I have about several books of poetry out, and then I also have some other things that I'm working on that's coming forward. And I'll make sure you all get that. The podcast also starts in January 1. I have the podcast that will be starting up, the YouTube channel, social media, the whole nine. And so I will be able to communicate with our people.
All right. So, well, now I have to introduce myself. So I'm Abraham Steiner. I'm from Accra, Ghana. I come from a very little town on the Atlantic coast called Osu Accra, which is the home of one of the biggest slave castles on the West African coast, the Christianborg Castle, which was built by the Danes. History tells us that a lot of captured brothers and sisters that left Christianborg Castle ended up in the Danish Caribbean, St. Croix, St. Thomas, and St. John, which is now the US Virgin Island. It has been my aim to become a bridge between the continent and the diaspora. And today, the panel you see, 3 of the panel members have been with me. We've been to Christianborg and have experienced firsthand knowledge of what happened. It's been 400 years of slavery. This year has been a very bad year for everyone on this globe, but Kwanzaa is here and we have to celebrate. So the Kwanzaa committee between Rochester and Buffalo, New York is programming a virtual Kwanzaa, and I was tasked to work on NIA, which is purpose. The group working on Kwanzaa in Buffalo came up with this theme: reframing the African legacy beyond the return. So reframing the African legacy after the 400 years of slavery. So that is what we're going to talk about today in this short discussion. We're going to look at heritage, and we want to look at the legacy that we're going to leave behind. The color of our skin is something we inherited. It is a heritage. And that is what makes us Africans and makes us who we are. Some people came before us, did a lot of work in this Niagara region. W.B. Du Bois is one of the main persons, and 3 of you on this screen have been to the W.B. Du Bois Center for Pan-African Research with myself in Accra, Ghana. As a matter of fact, my friendship with Dilbert started from the W.B. Du Bois Pan-African Research Center. And I think it was a work of the spirits that connected the 2 of us. So this panel is here to help delve into what is going on the motherland and the work that we're trying to do in the diaspora to connect us to go beyond the 400 years of slavery. On this note, I'm going to open the panel for a quick discussion. Dilbert, like I just said, we met at the W.B. Du Bois Center in Accra. Behind you on the screen is the Christianborg Castle. Celeste, there you stand right in there. So for those of you who have not been to Ghana or to Africa, this is one of the castles. Dilbert, what was your experience on that trip? And what do you want to tell members or the family in the diaspora about that pilgrimage that you took?
Thank you, my brother. I want to make this quick because it was quite the experience. So the creator created a situation for us to meet. And so when we met, that was actually my third trip to the continent. I had been to Ghana in 2005, and I went to Cameroon, and I think in 2018. So here's 2019, I was in Ghana again for the year return. And so, first, I think we need to really call these places out for what they were. This is a Delbertism. They were not castles, they were dungeons, right?
Yeah.
And so what's important for me in going back again to Ghana was almost like a rites of passage. And I say that because I need to go back to the scene of the crime. And so while I was there, I actually went to three dungeons. I went to Cape Coast, I went to Elmina, and because I met this brother, go to Osu, right? And I think the beauty of meeting Abraham and going to Osu, for those that have been to some of the dungeons, there's this door of no return. And normally you're standing inside the castle, the door to the ocean. Well, Abraham, because of his connections, got a private tour for me. And I got a chance to go back through the door from the ocean side. And I'm not sure if that's been done by too many people. So in other words, what I saw this metaphor was that I was the return of the stolen ones.
Exactly.
And it was so powerful because it was so important that I honor the many enslaved Africans that were taken from the continent. And so I say rites of passage because in the United States, very seldom do our African-American males and females go through some types of rites of passage, which is an indicator into ascending to a responsibility based on age. And so for me as a community scholar and a second generation storyteller, it was important for me to go back to the scene of the crime so I could start this healing process by visiting these castles and telling my ancestors that I'm back for you.
Great, great, great. So Karen, we're still on the scene of the crime, as Dilbert said. You also have the opportunity to visit, I think, the 3 dungeons, and you also made it to the other scene of the crime in Christianburg. So what is your experience coming from Buffalo and being raised in a lot of cultural awareness and that taking you to the continent and back?
Thanks for asking. And I want to thank you again publicly for taking me with you to Ghana and giving me a very personal and an intimate experience of the African culture on the continent. Coming from Buffalo, Buffalo is a very rich cultural community. With respect to understanding our heritage, and they do a very awesome job of keeping it alive. So as I was exposed to different events in Buffalo, one of the things as a child I always said, I want to go back to the continent, and I made it my mission. So I was blessed to be able to go not once but twice. So my first trip was to Egypt, and I did a 2-week study tour there. My second trip was with you to Ghana, and that was even more enlightening and just an enriching, empowering experience for me. Having gone to the dungeons was something that I always wanted to experience. I wanted to know what my ancestors experienced. I wanted to understand what the narrative was that we are taught in school and compare it to what the reality was on the continent. And having had that experience of touring those dungeons was so emotional, so gut-wrenching, because in that experience, I heard the other side, what the story was from the other side, the African perspective, and just understanding that the Portuguese had come and had deceptive practices to take over the land, to deceive the leaders of the land at that point in time, which was how they took over. Understanding the depths of their treachery, so to speak, and how all of that occurred was just overwhelming. Having at one of the dungeons, and I'm not sure if it was Christianburg, but we went to one of it may have been Elmina, where we toured one of the rooms in which those Africans who rebelled against being enslaved were placed into a room and left there until there was no life, no sounds of life coming out. So the only way that they came out of that room was as a corpse. So those are stories that we don't know. And we're not teaching that perspective in school. So like my brother said, being able to see the door of no return, but then one of the rich experience you had for us while we were there was a ceremonial coming back. So we did poured libations at the ocean, the shoreline, and then ceremoniously we all walked back through that door of no return. So that was such a beautiful experience because I felt the weight of all my ancestors, that I was bringing them back home. And that was just so beautiful. I know I got very emotional at that point when we went back up the spiral stairs in which our ancestors came down to board that ship and to be scattered all over. Very powerful experience, Abraham, very powerful and very rich. Unlike what we would get here from any book that we're used to instruct students on African culture.
Thank you, Karen. So still going about the trip or the pilgrimage. Celeste, just speak after your mother.
All right. Yeah, to just piggyback off of everything that she said, it was a truly transformative experience, And, when I think about just the contrast of this white, pristine fortress and the way in which our ancestors were kept and held and tortured and families separated, women and children abused, and all these other things that our ancestors endured and survived. It was truly a remarkable experience being on the other side of that door, I think that I just think about that 1 by 1 foot window, and when they closed the door on us, and we were able to experience that darkness, to think about how people endured that for months before the ships came, so much so to the point where people went blind, being in darkness for that long. I mean, it was incredible, and a spiritual experience to be there. And again, like my mother, I'm truly appreciative and grateful to you for that experience.
Good.
It has truly changed the trajectory of my life. Yes.
All right. Yep, now we're on to brother Kevin. And just to say a little bit how I met Kevin. We were in a training in Rochester at the Rochester Teacher Center, and we were in a very dark room. This man comes in and he couldn't find a seat next to anybody, but he sat next to me. I guess that's all divine, the ancestors were speaking. So when the lights came on and we started talking, he said, I just moved here from Philadelphia. and I am into Harambe, and that's where the friendship started from. So Kevin, with all you have heard and all the work we're all doing to raise consciousness about people who are working, teaching children of African descent, what would you say, looking at Kwanzaa and looking at the tenet of Nia, purpose, what do you think? Uh, just speak on your thoughts about the tenet of purpose when it comes to the celebration of Kwanzaa.
Oh, bless. Well, first and foremost, going off of Nia being purpose, I don't think, well, I believe that we should all be able to understand our purpose better once we get into who we are, right? So if an individual has a purpose, he or she knows their purpose based on knowing themselves. And out of knowing oneself comes purpose, right? So by knowing who you are, what you are, when and where and why you are, then you will understand the skill sets that you possess, the gifts and talents that you possess. And it's those gifts, skills, and talents that are managed properly in order to be able to produce something for the whole. And then that becomes the physical manifestation of the purpose that we all carry with us. And so, for example, I know myself enough to know that I deal with word, and a lot of my work and the healing work is my speech, right? So knowing that, I am then able to manage it when I get into whatever art or craft that I deal with, that at the end of it is going to be a production that comes out within my speech. And so I think that by knowing and understanding what purpose is, or understanding who you are, that will be able to attack purpose in such a way that is connecting each and everybody at the table, or in the community or in the village. So I think it's imperative.
Okay. All right. So now moving forward, we're talking about reframing the African legacy and going beyond the return. So now we have been here for 400 years. We're moving forward. Like we said, W.B. Du Bois, Frederick Douglass, and a few other of the ancestors have done some work in this Niagara region, right? So what do we think will be a very good avenue, or what are you doing yourself in that community to help leave a legacy behind? At one time, I was in a lecture and someone tried to explain heritage and legacy, and they used an example of someone running in a race. Whatever you inherit when you get that baton, that's the heritage. But how fast you run to pass on the baton to the next person is what leaves the legacy behind. If you run very fast, you're going to help the group to win, even though you inherited the baton at a very late time. So I'm going to go straight back to you, Dilbert. What do you think, or what are some of the work that you're doing to help pass the baton on to our next generation? You got, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you, brother. The passing of the baton. And thank you, brother Kevin and Celeste. And oh, I didn't know that was your mom. That's powerful. Oh my God, that's generational. So that's exactly what this is all about. It's about each one teach one. And so, you know, like I said, my primary purpose is to share information in a way to create this certain level of curiosity that will lead to this desire for critical inquiry. And critical inquiry basically means it's up to each individual to start doing that research to learn more. And brother Kevin, you are so right. On that journey of self-discovery, you're going to find out some information that's really going to align with the purpose the creator has in your life. And so this whole notion of need and purpose, I just feel like if you know more, you do more. And I'm responsible, man. You know, one of the biggest challenges for me, and this is Delbert's challenge, is just there's quite a few people that know as much as I do and may know more, but they're choosing not to pass that on to the next generation. And we have a responsibility. The work I do is not about me.
Yep.
It's about those that have come before me and the ones that are unborn. So I just, to my dying breath, I will be telling our story.
All right. Good job, Dilbert. All right, Karen, I know you came back from Egypt and you started some project, some work with children in the Rochester City School District.
Yes, I did.
Do you want to speak a little bit about that and what you think about this heritage and legacy?
Well, good. I'm laughing because I want to piggyback on what my brother Delbert just said, because I'm la 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 la. That's who I've been since I've returned. So as much as I am able and as much as anyone is willing to listen, I am sharing the knowledge that I learned. So yes, I did travel to Egypt. And I'm gonna name drop. I traveled with brother Anthony Broader, and he, if you don't know, is slated to be the first African American to spearhead the excavation and renovation of not one but two temples in Egypt. And so he's a very well-versed author on the topic. And so the 2 weeks that I spent with him was just transformative for me. I gained so much knowledge of African ancestral heritage just in that 2 weeks, and still it was not enough time to learn all that there was and see all that there was to see in that region. We traveled up and down the Nile, close to Sudan in that 2 week span. But after traveling back from Egypt, I had an opportunity through him to offer a community class. So it's always been my desire to share this knowledge with our youth. As an educator, I see firsthand how our kids are faring in our public school system. And to me, the lack of information, knowledge of who they are before slavery is in part the greatest issue that we are still dealing with in our communities today. Our kids don't know who they are and themselves. So through this program, which was called Cultural Imperative Program, the CIP, I taught students from the community and their families, because it wasn't just a program for kids. I wanted their parents to come too, because if I'm going to transform the mind of your child, I want to be able to transform the mind of the adults as well, so that when that kid goes back home and is overwhelmed with all the content that I shared with them, I want him to be or her to be able to talk openly at home with their parents, and hopefully that would inspire them to continue on this journey of research and learning more about themselves. So this was a 5-month program where we met on Saturdays, and we kind of went through the Broader Files book. And it was an awesome program. The kids gained a lot from it. It was amazing to hear their voice as they marinated with the material that they learned from the book. And so I want to continue that format of being able to offer classes that are culturally based for not just the youth, but families as well, because I think lack of knowledge, lack of being okay with having pride in yourself as an African descendant is a major problem across the United States, but with our African American folks. And so I'd like to continue that work.
All right. Celeste, just following your mom. I know you also, after you got back, you also doing some, work in the community. Can you speak to that and relate it to purpose? You unmute. You need to unmute.
Naturally, right?
Yeah.
So I work with North Star Rites of Passage. And through that, we take girls that are 11 and up, 11 to actually 15. And we talk to them. We ask three basic questions, who am I? Am I who I say I am? And am I all I ought to be, right? And we take them through a process of self-discovery and ensuring that it's all African-centered. And it's a truly beautiful process for them and also for us as elders within the community to facilitate that as well. So I'm doing that, as well as I just got off of Zoom, so I'm all zoomed out with what's called Black Women's Leadership Forum, and that is a group that was started to address internalized racism and the ways in which Black women facilitate racism amongst each other, and we've not racism amongst each other, but ways in which we've internalized it and perpetuate it. So we had our Karamu this afternoon or this evening. So I do that, as well as through my legacy of teaching my son. And I think that being the first teacher is a spiritual experience to teach your child. And I think that it's important that the education be rooted in who we are as people and what we have to offer. And just like Brother Delbert said, that everything begins with slavery, and you can't expect the system to provide you with anything that would be of benefit to you. So I think it's very important that even if you're not able to homeschool, that kids receive a supplemental education in the way that the Saturday school that my mom has done with Dr. Browder. I believe that it's highly imperative, because you can't expect the system to, I think is what Malcolm X said this, right? Like, you can't, only a fool would let his enemy, educate his children, And I think that fundamentally, it's not in their interest to tell the truth. And so it's important that we do that for our children. And so in the ways in which I'm doing that is through the Rites of Passage program and through educating my son.
All right. Okay. Now we're going to move on to Brother Kevin, still talking about beyond the legacy, beyond the return, and looking at heritage and legacy. I know, Kevin, you came to Rochester a couple of years ago to work with what we call the Freedom School in Rochester. The Freedom School was serving overage, undercredit high school kids, or kids that we felt the system felt they have to be in alternative education. Speaking on the work you did with the Freedom School and relating it to purpose and talking about some of the gains that we got out of it, can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I actually want to start, and give thanks for the light that was shared so far. Well, the journey started before that. And so my position as a national trainer for the Children Defense Fund out of Washington, D.C., allowed me to be able to travel to different states and cities in order to work alongside their directors, their site coordinators, and their college students and their children, the participants, students, the scholars, if you will. And in that work, what was unique about Rochester was that everything that you mentioned was not is not a part of that was the addition that Rochester brought to the table, right? And so Freedom School's motto is to the whole thing is set in the children a desire to want to read, right? So the program is a 6-week program, reading program, that we go around training these college interns to do. And so what happened here in Rochester was unique, and it was special in that they also had a form of economics that went into it, right? And so the freedom schools here were teaching the young people the economic component in it, which prior to Rochester was not a main ingredient in the freedom school model. Once it came to Rochester, then freedom school and then the school district here begin to notice, well, these young people are excelling in freedom schools because of the environment, right? And so the environment was filled with life, love, and laughter, right? And education was the base of all of that, life, love, and laughter. And so those individuals who were being successful in freedom school turned around was being successful in school. And so the school district they were working to figure out why that was. And so certain individuals then came to the freedom schools to take a look at it, to see what was going on or what was different in terms of their teaching styles, their methodologies. Once they picked it up, and then they formed a relationship to do exactly what you said. And so the work, the legacy in that work is that I started out as a participant in Philadelphia myself. So I went from a kid to a high school student to a college student, and then a trainer who trained trainers to train children across the, across the country. And so in that was my legacy, and then was my service. So the service or the legacy was in a service, right? And so the same way I help to serve people, that service will speak to a people that I will never know, that will come along, that will speak about a person who they know one day served when they did not know him or her. And then that's how it continue, right? And so this type of service is what the work that I do, in addition to raising my sons, right? So just like the Queen said, one of the most important things I think which we have to get back to is the family first. Sometimes I think we put so much of ourselves in our work and community building and nation building, and sometimes our families are in pieces. And so what do I mean by that? I mean that it probably was more people marching on the streets for the right to live, and something was going on back at their homes, right? And so it is my journey and our teachings of my teachers that we make sure that our house is on foundation that is stable and sound, in such a way that when somebody walk past the house, based on what's going on, they will begin to understand or see that, oh, this is a solid foundation. And as that house on the block, I am then, as the elder said earlier, I am then responsible, not only as an artist, but as a community member, to see to it that all the boys, Black boys in that area are good, right? And so how do I do that? I use my sons to do it. My son, I have a 7-year-old son, and I have an 11-year-old son. And I started with my 11-year-old son when he was 7. I started and I crafted this concept around a rites of entry. And so a rites of entry process is to bring the brothers together and getting them acclimated for a rites of passage. So we start rites of entry at the age of 7. And so my son's at 7 goes through what is considered a rites of passage, only to get to 13 and then go forward. And so I take around when my son, my 11-year-old, his name is Adeoba, so keep saying my son. My son, Ade, when he was 7, I took the friends he had and I brought them all together. And out of the friends that he had, 1, 2, 3, there's about 5 of the brothers who all went through. And it was my goal to create something that I didn't have. And so from Ade turning 7 until he turned 8, every weekend for 2 hours on Saturday and Sunday, I had him with me. Unless it was a fire or a thunderstorm, I don't know, right? That the boys weren't with me. Their mothers and their fathers agreed, what it did and what we begin to realize is that it built the community, because now these young people around their fathers were calling me father, and around their mothers, interacting with me around my sons, my wife, and us, it was an extended family. And so the boys are brothers. As a matter of fact, one of the young brothers, and this was Ade when he was 7. So Ade just turned 11. His brothers just turned 11 and 10. And so they just had a Zoom call. One of the brothers is actually writing a book, who I am helping him to produce his first book come to the beginning of next year. And so Sekou, who was 7, who was 3 at the time that Ade was 7, he was with us. He was my 3-year-old. He didn't want to be without the boys. And so he learned or took in or soaked up everything they were learning when he was 3. Now he's 7 going through the process. And so I have him, and because of COVID and we're in this new space, I have a family friend who I took their son. I say, give him to me, he has to come. And so they will, gave their son over. And so every weekend, since Sekou, June 19th is his birthday, since he turned 7, I have had the boys with me, Genesee Valley Park, and I do my classes in Ontario, wherever I can get to some space. I go out in nature, and we have our courses, we have our class. And so the legacy is in building these young brothers up. And I was having a conversation with my wife in short, and I told my wife, and I was looking at my son, and he was interacting around the house. I said, I am okay, because I feel like my 11-year-old could take my place now.
Yeah.
And so what that means simply is that even during the course, so my 11-year-old, he's the assistant teacher right now in my course. So my 11-year-old is now the teacher for the 7 and 8-year-old kids in the class. And so each course, they go through a whole year. Coming 2021, the course will be every quarter. And so I was able to scale it, learn it, chop it up, and make it just right so that it could be quarterly when everything is running the way it should be. And so that's how I'm keeping it running. And I do it with literature, with books. The elder says as storytellers, we have a responsibility to do so. And so as a writer, I have the power to put names of people, businesses, and relationships into books. And those books goes on shelves that one day will be read by somebody who is not born yet. And because they will come here and one day they will read this literature, they will know of an Abraham who is not Abraham, but who comes from Ghana. You know what I'm saying? They will understand that it is in the literature that we have to keep telling our stories. And so that's why writing and reading are so crucial to not only my development, but those around me. And that is the legacy and how I'll keep it.
Thank you. I think we're almost running out of time. So I'm going to play a quick intercession music for 2 minutes or a minute, and then we can wrap it up. All right. So this is from the Ghana group that is here in Rochester. Right. So on this note, I'm going to ask Dilbert to give us the blessings so we can end our discussion.
Thank you. Hey, I put my in the chat. I put my website because I would, and also I will put my contact information. So the blessing is real simple. as we go forward, and we're going to talk about Sankofa, in order to move forward, we must look back. Because in order to move forward, we got to make sure that we carry the rich history and the heritage of our ancestors. I like to focus on the egg in the mouth of the bird. And that's something that's not talked about as much. And that egg is about those generations that have yet to be born. And so as we look back and look forward, let's understand that we have this universal responsibility of the Africans of the diaspora. And the diaspora is not just in America, it's global. We have a responsibility to carry the legacy of our ancestors whose shoulders we stand on. Ashe.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Well, great conversations. And I believe everybody can share their emails and contacts. Kevin, I know we're sending, we're registering a son to you. His name is Henry. He's gonna be knocking on your door to join your group very soon.
Bless.
I would like to say a very big thank you to everybody who's on this screen. And we're still doing our trips to Ghana. We're doing our trips twice a year. The August trip is always the best because that's when there's a lot of festivals going on along the west coast of Ghana. And anybody who would like to be part of this trip, you can give me a call, Abraham Steiner. You know, I'm in Rochester. Even in Buffalo, you can get in touch with me. So on this note, I want to say a very big thank you to everybody. And everybody have a good Kwanzaa. Everybody.
Thank you.
Right?
Abo.
Again, thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for all of your hard work.
Absolutely. Thank
Indeed.
you. Peace and blessings, everyone.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you.
We'll
Thank
stay in
you.
touch, Dilbert.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. All right.
I love you all.
Likewise. Thank you so much. This was amazing.
Thank you all.
Appreciate the opportunity. Hey.